In the heart of Jerusalem, where stones whisper stories older than empires, there stands a question that has echoed through millennia. What truths lie hidden within the walls of Solomon's temple? The very name evokes visions of gold-plated sanctuaries, sacred chambers, and the most mysterious covenant in human history. Yet, beyond the grandeur, beyond the shimmering splendor, there is a prophecy, silent, waiting, almost forgotten. Have we walked past it for centuries, blind to its significance? Some scholars suggest that what we see today, fragments of ruins and remnants of text, are but shadows of a design meant to speak across time. And if this prophecy is real, what could it mean for us, standing in a world so far removed from the temple's holy courts? Long before the temple rose, King Solomon, famed for wisdom that rivaled the heavens, dreamed of a house for the Almighty. Chronicles tell us of a king who spoke to God in the quiet of the night, who envisioned every stone, every column, as more than material. They were vessels of divine language, a code written not in ink, but in the very architecture of worship. And yet, Solomon was a man of paradoxes. In the same breath he built glory for God, he was ensnared by human desire. Could it be that the prophecy hidden within his temple was a warning, a glimpse of events that would unfold long after his throne lay cold in the dust? We often imagine prophecies as grand, sweeping declarations delivered from fiery skies. But some whisper in subtler ways, in patterns, in the sacred geometry of walls, in inscriptions carved deep enough to survive centuries, yet quiet enough to escape the casual eye. The prophet Jeremiah hinted at such hidden truths, speaking of treasures sealed and secrets buried for those who seek with earnest hearts. Jeremiah 29:11-14. Could it be that the temple's walls were not only a house for ritual, but a guardian of knowledge, a silent oracle awaiting those who would decipher its message? Consider the location itself, the Temple Mount, the elevated heart of Jerusalem, a place where heaven and earth seemed to touch. Every step toward the inner sanctum was calculated, deliberate, steeped in symbolism. Some modern archaeologists argue that the alignment of Solomon's temple with celestial bodies was no accident, that the walls themselves might encode a timeline, mapping events not yet realized. Imagine a wall not as stone alone, but as a storyteller, revealing the rise and fall of nations, the unfolding of divine plans, and the endurance of faith across generations. And yet, for all its majesty, the temple was never immune to destruction. Empires clashed, fires consumed, and the sacred treasure vanished into exile. But the walls, those silent witnesses, remained. Hidden within them, some suggest, are messages meant to challenge every generation. Observe, reflect, and understand. The path of men is entwined with the hand of God. Every etching, every architectural choice could be a sentence in a divine manuscript, written in code, waiting for eyes willing to read beyond the surface. History itself seems to hint at this hidden language. From the Babylonian exile to the Roman siege, the temple has been described with reverence, fear, and awe. Josephus, the Jewish historian, chronicled its splendor in painstaking detail, emphasizing the precision of its measurements, the meticulous care in its design, and the wealth that adorned it. But he too noted something that scholars today find puzzling: subtle carvings and arrangements whose purpose seemed more than ornamental. Were they merely artistic choices, or were they deliberate hints, messages intended for those who would follow in the shadow of Solomon's wisdom? Imagine walking through those halls long ago, listening to the murmur of priests and the prayers of the faithful. Each echo would carry more than devotion. It would carry meaning encoded in the temple itself. The inner sanctum, the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant rested, may have been the climax of this divine narrative. Scholars debate what was inside that sacred chamber, yet many agree that it represented a culmination, a focal point for prophecy itself. And if the ark was a repository of covenant and mystery, what if the walls surrounding it were another vessel entirely, an enduring testament of God's plan written in stone, impervious to time and human forgetfulness? This prophecy, hidden yet omnipresent, challenges us to consider the nature of divine communication. It is not always thunder and lightning, not always proclamations that shake the heavens. Sometimes it waits quietly, layered in the mundane, in the construction of walls, in the measurement of beams, in the deliberate sequence of steps leading to a sacred presence. To uncover it, one must look with more than eyes. One must see with understanding, intuition, and faith. Some believe that deciphering these hidden messages is not merely an academic pursuit. It is a spiritual journey, a path that demands patience, humility, and reverence. And here lies the mystery that draws us today. What if the prophecy hidden in Solomon's temple was never meant to be fully revealed in one generation? What if its unfolding was designed to stretch across centuries, speaking to every era in a language attuned to its moment? As we stand in the modern age, amid ruins and reconstructions, the question becomes personal. Can we perceive the whispers of the past and understand their call for our time? In the silence of stone, the story waits. It calls to the curious, to those willing to seek, to those ready to witness a narrative that bridges heaven and earth. Some may dismiss it as legend, others as speculation. Yet, in the tension between skepticism and belief lies the power of the story itself. Perhaps the greatest invitation of Solomon's walls is not to possess knowledge, but to cultivate wonder, to ask the questions that echo through centuries, and in doing so, to encounter the sacred in the ordinary. And as we begin this journey into the hidden prophecies of the temple, I invite you to hold this thought close. Some truths are discovered not by force, but by the patience to see what the world has long overlooked. If this stirs a curiosity in you, pause and reflect, and share your own sense of wonder in the comments, for perhaps the dialogue itself continues the prophecy's story. The story of Solomon's temple is more than stone and gold. It is a tapestry of human ambition intertwined with divine intention. To understand the prophecy hidden within its walls, we must journey back to the moment of its conception, when Solomon, newly crowned, stood on the threshold of a destiny both glorious and fraught with challenge. He had inherited a kingdom at its zenith, yet he knew that the measure of a king was not in conquest or wealth alone, but in the enduring legacy left to his people and to God. The scriptures recount that Solomon prayed for wisdom above all else. 1 Kings 3:9-12, a request that not only guided his rule, but unknowingly shaped the very stones that would become his temple. Builders and artisans from distant lands were summoned. Tyrian craftsmen, famed for skill in cedar and bronze, arrived with their tools and knowledge. Every block, every beam was cut with precision. And many scholars suggest that the arrangement of these materials carried meaning beyond construction. The temple was laid out according to sacred geometry, proportions reflecting celestial patterns and divine numerology, perhaps encoding events yet to unfold. Each measure was deliberate, as if the walls themselves could speak, a language of prophecy only discernible to those who sought with patience and insight. Inside the temple, the holy place was adorned with tables of gold, lampstands, and curtains embroidered with cherubim. But it was the Holy of Holies, hidden behind the veil, that held the most profound mystery. The Ark of the Covenant rested there, containing the tablets of the law, the tangible manifestation of God's covenant with Israel. Scholars have long debated the significance of this chamber. Some suggest that its very placement, the proportions of the walls, and even the sequence of steps leading to it were a form of coded message. Was it merely an architectural marvel, or did it serve as a celestial map pointing toward moments of destiny in Israel's future? The prophet Isaiah spoke of God's plans that stand firm from ancient times, Isaiah 46:10. Perhaps in the temple, these plans were etched not on scrolls, but in stone. The idea that architecture could serve as prophecy is not new to scholars. Many ancient cultures inscribed meaning into their buildings, aligning temples and tombs with stars, solstices, and lunar cycles. Solomon's temple, at the apex of religious and political life, may have been Israel's greatest attempt at this sacred science. A structure that communicated across generations, a message in silence, waiting for eyes attuned to its language. Yet, even as the temple rose to grandeur, there were whispers of impermanence. Solomon's reign, though legendary, was not immune to human frailty. Political alliances, marriages with foreign nations, and indulgence in luxuries brought tension to the kingdom. Some rabbis suggest that these choices foreshadowed the eventual fracturing of Israel, and that the temple's hidden prophecy may have included warnings of this very vulnerability. Within its walls, the blueprint of destiny intertwined blessing and caution, reminding those who entered that holiness demands both reverence and discernment. The dedication of the temple was a moment of unparalleled ceremony. Solomon led the people in prayer, invoking God's presence in words that still resonate. May your eyes be open toward this temple day and night, toward the place where you promised to put your name. 1 Kings 8:29. The priests offered sacrifices, the Levites sang psalms, and a cloud of glory filled the sanctuary. To the observers, it was divine affirmation. To the discerning, it may have been the activation of a prophecy. Walls now holding not just space, but divine truth, encoded in their very design. Some scholars note that the number of steps, the arrangement of columns, and even the carvings of palm trees and cherubim were intentional markers, guiding those who would later seek to understand God's unfolding plan. Over time, the temple became a center of national identity and spiritual focus. Kings and prophets alike walked its courts, and every festival, sacrifice, and prayer reinforced its sacred function. Yet history moved inexorably toward exile and destruction. Babylonian forces laid siege, and the temple was consumed by fire. But remarkably, while treasures and artifacts vanished, the walls, the silent witnesses of Solomon's wisdom, endured. It is here that the prophecy's subtlety emerges, not in objects that can be taken, but in structures that survive, in inscriptions and designs that continue to speak long after the voices of priests have faded. Some researchers suggest that even in ruins, the temple retains signs, faint and cryptic, of the events foretold within. The arrangement of stones, the dimensions of remaining walls, and certain symbolic carvings may encode timelines, warnings, or promises for generations to come. The ancient builders, guided by divine insight, may have intended the temple to serve as a perpetual teacher, offering revelation not once, but continuously, for those who would seek it earnestly. To follow this prophecy is to recognize that history is not only a record of events, but a dialogue between God and humanity. Jerusalem itself, scarred yet resilient, embodies this ongoing conversation. Every conquest, exile, and restoration speaks to a narrative larger than any individual king or empire. The hidden message in Solomon's temple, if we are willing to perceive it, reminds us that divine insight often arrives in quiet forms, in layers that require discernment, patience, and faith. And so, as we trace the walls and study the patterns, the prophecy begins to reveal itself, not as a single revelation, but as a sequence of truths emerging across time. It challenges us to read history with spiritual eyes, to see the hand of God in the rise and fall of nations, in the endurance of a people, and in the silent testimony of stone. What lessons lie encoded for our own era? How might these ancient patterns speak into our modern lives, urging us to act with wisdom, discernment, and reverence? As we continue to explore the hidden messages of Solomon's temple, pause to consider your own place in this unfolding story. The walls may whisper to centuries, but their call is personal, inviting each of us to witness, reflect, and participate in a dialogue that transcends time. If the journey so far has sparked wonder in you, share it with someone who seeks insight, for the story of the temple is one that gains meaning as it is shared. The prophecy concealed within Solomon's temple is not only a story of kings and stones, it is a mirror for our own lives, a call to understand the sacred in the ordinary and to recognize patterns of faith and consequence that stretch across generations. To see it clearly, we must step beyond archaeology and scripture and into the realm of personal reflection. How does a wall built 3,000 years ago speak to us today? The answer may lie in the very principles that guided its creation: wisdom, intention, and alignment with the divine. When Solomon constructed the temple, every decision, from the selection of cedar to the carving of cherubim, was purposeful. Nothing was left to chance. Scholars suggest that even the sequence of steps to the Holy of Holies, the placement of columns, and the proportions of the inner chambers were laden with significance, forming a silent message of foresight, faith, and endurance. In our own lives, we too are building walls, metaphorical or literal, through our choices, our commitments, and our relationships. Are we attentive to what we place within them? Are our actions aligned with wisdom that transcends the immediate? Or are we building with haste, overlooking the long-term impact of our decisions? Consider the way the temple endured trials and yet retained its essence. Though it was sacked, burned, and looted, the stones, the carefully measured walls, and even subtle inscriptions carried the message forward. In a spiritual sense, this reflects the human journey. Our lives will inevitably encounter setbacks, loss, and hardship. Yet, like the temple, what is built with care, reverence, and intention has the potential to outlast adversity. It is a reminder that faith, character, and purpose, though invisible at times, form the framework upon which our future is anchored. There is a personal dimension to this prophecy that many overlook. The Ark of the Covenant, resting at the heart of the temple, was both a symbol and a repository of covenantal promises. Its presence suggests that God's guidance and law were central to the structure, not peripheral. In the same way, our lives, centered on principles of faith, ethics, and love, create a sacred space where divine insight can dwell. Some scholars note that the temple's layout may even encode stages of spiritual growth, from preparation to revelation, implying that prophecy is as much about the journey within as it is about the events outside. Patterns emerge when we examine the temple carefully. The alignment with celestial bodies, the numerological significance of certain dimensions, and the intricate carvings of flora and sacred imagery suggest that the architects intended the temple to communicate with those who would observe patiently. This invites reflection. Are we attuned to the subtle guidance around us? Do we notice the quiet, consistent signs that point toward purpose, much like the walls of the temple pointing toward divine truths? In our everyday lives, the signals may be small: a moment of clarity, a word from a friend, a passage of scripture that resonates deeply, but their cumulative effect can chart a path that transforms ordinary existence into something sacred. The hidden prophecy also challenges us to confront impermanence. Solomon's temple, magnificent as it was, eventually succumbed to destruction. Yet the foresight embedded within its design offered a message of continuity. Similarly, we must recognize that material achievements, worldly successes, and fleeting moments of recognition, while significant, do not endure in isolation. What endures is the integrity, wisdom, and faith we cultivate, the invisible structures of the soul that carry lessons beyond our immediate experience. In a subtle way, the prophecy urges us to build lives that reflect these enduring truths, to leave legacies that speak to generations long after we are gone. Applying this to our daily existence requires attention to detail, patience, and intention. The temple was not constructed overnight, and its significance was not revealed in a single moment. Likewise, our personal spiritual growth, understanding, and insight develop over time. The prophecy hidden in the walls calls us to slow down, observe patterns, and integrate lessons. It asks us to notice the subtle ways God communicates through events, relationships, and inner promptings. Even small decisions, when aligned with discernment and wisdom, contribute to a life that echoes the enduring message of Solomon's temple. Another lesson emerges in the temple's duality. Grandeur and humility coexist. The outer courts impressed with opulence, yet the innermost chamber required quiet reverence. There is a parallel in our lives. We may seek recognition, success, and influence, yet the deepest truth, the prophecy within us, unfolds not in outward display, but in the quiet commitment to integrity, prayer, and reflection. Just as the temple communicated through both its visible majesty and its hidden codes, so too does God speak through both the extraordinary and the ordinary moments of our lives. This personal reflection does not require scholarly mastery or access to ancient ruins. It demands openness, attentiveness, and courage to interpret the signs around us. It asks us to examine our own walls, to consider what messages our choices, habits, and relationships communicate, and to align them with wisdom that transcends mere survival. The prophecy in Solomon's temple becomes a mirror. It asks not only what has happened, but also, what are you building that will endure? Ultimately, the hidden prophecy invites transformation. It reminds us that history is a conversation, and we are participants. Our responses to challenges, our pursuit of wisdom, and our cultivation of faith continue the dialogue that began millennia ago in Jerusalem. If this reflection resonates, share it with someone who may need encouragement. Engage with these questions, not as an academic exercise, but as a spiritual practice. In doing so, we honor the essence of Solomon's temple, not merely as a relic of history, but as a living blueprint for how faith, intention, and discernment shape lives across generations. Even as we ponder the wisdom embedded in Solomon's temple, we cannot ignore the obstacles that cloud understanding and weaken faith. Life is rarely a straight path, and the prophecy hidden in stone reminds us that every journey of insight encounters resistance, both external and within ourselves. Doubts creep in like shadows along the corridors of the mind. How can a temple built thousands of years ago hold relevance today? How can stones speak when voices have long been silenced? These questions are not mere intellectual exercises. They are tests of the heart, of patience, of willingness to perceive beyond the obvious. History itself offers lessons in resistance. The temple faced siege and destruction, and Israel endured exile, oppression, and fragmentation. If the walls of Solomon's temple could not protect even the most sacred relics, what hope do we have for the fragile structures of our own lives? Yet it is precisely in this tension between fragility and endurance that the prophecy speaks most clearly. The walls were destroyed, treasures lost, yet the patterns, the measurements, the subtle inscriptions remained. They endured not because of might, but because of design. Similarly, the inner principles we cultivate, faith, integrity, wisdom, become resilient when built with intention, even when external circumstances seem to crumble. Doubt often masks itself as reason. We question the significance of ancient prophecy, the relevance of sacred design, the possibility of divine guidance in everyday life. In this, we mirror the challenges Solomon himself faced. Despite his wisdom, he wrestled with human desires, political pressures, and the limitations of mortality. The prophecy encoded in the temple was not a guarantee against failure, but a call to discernment, to vigilance, and to humility. For us, it becomes a lesson. Obstacles are not merely interruptions. They are invitations to strengthen our understanding and refine our purpose. Fear, too, is an obstacle. We fear that we will misinterpret signs, that we will overlook meaning in our lives, that the weight of responsibility is too great. This mirrors the tension felt by the priests and artisans who labored to construct the temple, aware that their work carried eternal implications. The hidden prophecy is not passive. It requires engagement, courage, and the willingness to confront uncertainty. In the same way, personal growth demands facing fears, acknowledging doubts, and continuing the search for wisdom even when answers remain elusive. Resistance can also appear in the form of distraction. Just as modern pilgrims can be swept away by the noise of contemporary life, so too were ancient Israelites confronted with competing loyalties and temptations. The temple stood as a focal point, yet its lessons could be overlooked amid human ambition, politics, or desire for comfort. Today, we must ask ourselves, what distractions prevent us from perceiving the deeper meaning in our lives? What walls are we building that obscure insight rather than invite understanding? The prophecy challenges us to see clearly, to strip away clutter, and to attune ourselves to what is enduring rather than transient. Another challenge lies in interpretation. The prophecy of Solomon's temple is subtle, encoded in dimensions, carvings, and alignment. Understanding it demands patience, study, and spiritual discernment. Many seekers stumble because they expect dramatic revelation rather than quiet truth revealed incrementally. Yet this is the nature of enduring wisdom. It is revealed to those who persist, who engage with both curiosity and humility, who recognize that insight is a process, not a sudden gift. Every attempt to understand, even if imperfect, becomes part of the dialogue between human hearts and divine intention. The inner battle, however, is not only about deciphering the past. It is about confronting our own limitations and tendencies, impatience, self-doubt, fear, and pride. These are the forces that obstruct understanding, just as they obstruct our capacity to live faithfully. The hidden prophecy, encoded in stone and time, mirrors our own spiritual architecture. If we neglect reflection, if we yield to despair or distraction, we risk losing sight of the patterns that guide us. But if we persevere, if we engage with courage and discernment, even obstacles become part of the lesson, shaping character and deepening insight. Faith, therefore, becomes a tool against resistance. Not blind faith, but informed, patient faith that seeks evidence in alignment with divine principle. The prophets and sages of Israel understood this. Revelation comes not solely in spectacle, but through commitment to seeking, questioning, and observing with attentive hearts. In our own lives, we can cultivate this same approach, using moments of doubt and difficulty as opportunities to strengthen resolve, clarify values, and recognize the subtle signs that guide us toward understanding. The prophecy within Solomon's temple, like all profound truths, challenges complacency. It demands that we confront our fears, examine our distractions, and wrestle with doubt. It calls us to persevere through difficulty, knowing that insight is earned through endurance. Just as the walls of the temple held coded messages for those willing to look, our own lives hold lessons for those willing to reflect. The question is not whether obstacles will arise, they inevitably will, but whether we will allow them to teach, refine, and illuminate the path forward. As we navigate these inner and outer challenges, remember that the journey itself is sacred. Each doubt questioned, each fear confronted, each distraction set aside brings us closer to perceiving the wisdom hidden in the world and within ourselves. If you feel the weight of resistance pressing on your own life, consider sharing your reflection with someone who may be struggling too. In community and dialogue, the lessons of endurance, insight, and faith multiply, continuing the silent prophecy embedded in Solomon's walls. The moment of transformation begins quietly, often without fanfare, like sunlight slipping through a hidden window in an ancient temple. For those who have walked the path of reflection and perseverance, The hidden prophecy of Solomon's temple becomes not merely an academic curiosity, but a living vision, a map for understanding the unseen forces that shape our lives and guide our choices. It is in this vision that the temple's lessons unfold fully, illuminating the sacred patterns that connect the past, present, and future. The first revelation is clarity. Just as the architects of Solomon's temple encoded divine wisdom into walls and dimensions, we begin to perceive the architecture of our own lives. Every challenge, every triumph, every decision forms part of a design far larger than immediate understanding. The prophets spoke of this when they urged Israel to observe patterns and learn from history, Hosea 12:10. Similarly, we begin to see that hardships are not random, that moments of joy carry hidden lessons, and that every encounter has the potential to shape destiny. The temple teaches us that the extraordinary is often embedded within the ordinary, waiting for patience and discernment to reveal it. Transformation also arrives in the recognition of alignment. The temple was constructed with meticulous attention to the heavens, with angles and orientations that mirrored celestial patterns. In a spiritual sense, this symbolizes alignment with divine purpose. As we apply the prophecy's wisdom to our lives, we begin to see where our actions harmonize or clash with the deeper principles that sustain human flourishing. Misalignment becomes apparent, but so does the path back to balance. Each choice, when reconsidered in light of this vision, becomes an opportunity to live with integrity and clarity, to reflect the sacred order that Solomon's builders sought to honor. A profound shift occurs when we realize that understanding is not passive. The temple's walls do not speak to the indifferent or the distracted. Their message is revealed to those willing to engage, to observe, to question, and to act. Similarly, transformation in our lives requires intentional participation. Faith becomes active, not merely a concept, but a lived reality. Patterns of behavior that once led to frustration or disconnection can be recalibrated, informed by insight drawn from reflection on principles encoded in history, scripture, and personal experience. The prophecy reminds us that divine guidance is accessible, but it demands vigilance, attentiveness, and courage. Vision also deepens in the recognition of continuity. The hidden prophecy was designed to endure centuries, speaking across generations. This permanence teaches us that our own lives, while fleeting, are part of a larger story. Decisions made with wisdom, acts of kindness, expressions of integrity, they leave a resonance that extends beyond the immediate moment. In this way, the prophecy encourages us to think beyond short-term gain, to cultivate patterns of life that echo with meaning, much as the carefully measured walls of Solomon's temple continue to whisper across time. The transformation extends to relationships as well. Just as the temple was a space where community gathered, where priests and worshippers interacted in shared purpose, so too are our connections avenues for the expression of wisdom and the transmission of insight. Understanding the prophecy inspires us to nurture these bonds, to act with discernment, compassion, and care. Our interactions become sacred spaces, opportunities to reflect divine principles, and contribute to a legacy that transcends individual ambition. The temple's hidden prophecy also reframes perception of obstacles. Trials, setbacks, and disappointments no longer appear as random misfortune, but as integral components of the journey. Each challenge reveals patterns, sharpens discernment, and strengthens resolve. The fire that consumed the temple centuries ago serves as a metaphor. Destruction is never the final word if principles are understood and internalized. What survives is the design, the wisdom, the encoded truth, just as insight and faith endure within those willing to perceive and apply it. This vision is not abstract, it is deeply practical. By contemplating the prophecy, we learn to approach life with intentionality, aligning our decisions with enduring principles. interpreting experiences with spiritual acuity and nurturing resilience in the face of uncertainty. The wisdom encoded in Solomon's temple encourages us to become architects of our own inner sanctuaries, constructing lives that honor faith, integrity, and foresight. Each day becomes an opportunity to refine the patterns of action, thought, and relationship, mirroring the care with which the temple itself was built. Finally, the prophecy imparts hope, a vision of possibility. Just as the walls of Solomon's temple once held messages for generations yet unborn, so too can our lives carry meaning that reaches beyond our immediate circumstances. Understanding this truth reshapes priorities, infuses ordinary moments with sacred significance, and encourages us to participate actively in the unfolding story of creation. Insight becomes not merely a personal blessing, but a gift to others, a beacon of guidance for those willing to look beyond the surface of life's events. As we embrace this transformation, consider sharing what resonates with someone in your life. The prophecy is not static. It lives through engagement, reflection, and conversation. By passing insight forward, we honor the intent of those ancient walls, extending their wisdom into our present era. Let this vision guide your steps, inform your choices, and inspire actions that reflect the sacred architecture of life itself. In recognizing the hidden prophecy, we find not only clarity and alignment, but the profound possibility of becoming instruments of insight, hope, and enduring faith. As our journey reaches its culmination, we return to the walls of Solomon's temple, those silent witnesses of divine wisdom and human endeavor. Their story is one of endurance, of prophecy encoded in stone, and of a sacred dialogue that stretches across millennia. The message they hold is both timeless and immediate, that divine intention is woven into creation, that understanding requires attentiveness, and that faith is not a passive inheritance, but an active, living pursuit. The walls, though long silent, speak still to those willing to perceive, with eyes of insight and hearts attuned to the eternal. The essence of the prophecy lies in continuity. The builders, priests and kings of Israel created more than a house of worship. They constructed a narrative that bridges past, present, and future. Every measured stone, every carving of cherubim and palm, every alignment with the heavens communicates a layered truth. Life is sacred, history is purposeful, and humanity is entrusted with both responsibility and revelation. By understanding this, we recognize that the patterns of the past are not distant echoes but living guidance, urging us to act with wisdom, discernment, and integrity in our own lives. As the temple endured fire, exile, and destruction, so too does the prophecy endure. This resilience offers profound insight. Material impermanence does not negate divine design. Even in ruins, the structure retains meaning, offering a roadmap for those who seek it. The lesson extends personally. What we build in our lives, our character, our faith, our relationships, carries a weight and significance that transcends immediate circumstance. Challenges may come, yet principles grounded in wisdom and reverence endure, offering stability and guidance for generations yet unborn. The prophecy also calls us to perception and engagement. Solomon's temple was not merely to be seen, it was to be understood, studied, and honored. Similarly, divine insight is not a passive inheritance. It requires reflection, participation, and the courage to apply lessons to daily life. Every act of patience, every moment of discernment, every choice to align with principle rather than impulse becomes part of the sacred architecture of our existence. In this way, the prophecy transforms from historical curiosity into living guidance, shaping not only what we know, but who we are and how we act in the world. Perhaps the most profound aspect of the prophecy is its invitation. It asks us to witness, to interpret, and to share. The walls of the temple speak across time, but they gain power when their message is engaged, reflected upon, and passed forward. In our own lives, this means cultivating awareness, nurturing wisdom, and extending insight to others. Just as the temple once gathered priests and pilgrims, our lives can gather understanding and hope, creating a living community of reflection and action. Each thoughtful decision, each compassionate act, each commitment to integrity becomes a continuation of the prophecy, a modern echo of ancient intention. In reflecting on this sacred architecture, we are reminded that prophecy is not merely prediction. It is guidance, encouragement, and revelation intertwined. The hidden messages in Solomon's temple challenge us to seek beyond surface appearances, to recognize patterns, to endure trials with patience, and to participate consciously in the unfolding story of life. By doing so, we align with the principles that have sustained faith through generations, discovering clarity, resilience, and purpose in the process. And so, as we stand metaphorically before these ancient walls, we are invited to build our own lives with intention and wisdom. Each thought, action, and decision becomes a stone in the ongoing sanctuary of human experience. The prophecy hidden within Solomon's temple is now ours to interpret, to live, and to pass forward. In embracing its message, we honor the legacy of a king who sought divine wisdom, the artisans who translated vision into stone, and the enduring presence of a truth that transcends time itself. If this journey has stirred understanding within you, share it, reflect upon it, and invite others to witness the echoes of divine wisdom in the world around them. For the prophecy of Solomon's temple is not only history, it is an ongoing call, a sacred dialogue, and a timeless reminder that faith, insight, and intention can endure beyond all measure, shaping generations yet to come.